right. Hello, my name is Heather. Welcome to Heather's Library. This podcast is just about books that I like, books that I don't like, just a simple book review podcast. And to honor the first episode, I'm going to be talking about my all-time favorite book series, the Lunar Chronicles. This is part one. There will be a part two sometime in the future detailing the other books in the series. They're kind of side books, they're not the main four books. This episode is going to focus on the main four books. So I'm going to get started with that. The first book in the series is called Cinder, and it is set in New Beijing in the Eastern Commonwealth in TE, meaning technological era. So, this is a futuristic book, and it has elements of sci-fi and fantasy, which I really do love. Just a quick description of the book. Basically, Lettumosis, the plague, is coming back after a really long time of Earth not having to deal with it. And people are freaking out about it. The leaders of Earth don't really know what to do about it, and it's affecting pretty much anyone and everyone. And this main character of this book is obviously Cinder. She is a cyborg. She was adopted into a family when she was around 13 years old, and it is believed that her biological parents were killed in a hover crash. And a hover, if you don't know, is just a futuristic car here. It's like a hover car. So, in this book, Cinder discovers the truth about her ancestry and why she's a cyborg. She is, I believe in the book, it said she was like 36.28% cyborg, so that's a really high percentage in this context of the book. She has parts of her brain that are cyborg. She has her eyes that are cyborg completely. Her left leg is cyborg, and I believe her left hand is, I can't remember. One of her hands is completely just metal. And she is a mechanic. She was adopted into a new family when she was 13, and her stepmom and her stepsister were not welcoming to her at all. Her stepmom's name is Adri, and the unwelcoming stepsister's name is Pearl, and they weren't welcoming to her at all. Because in this society, it is believed that cyborgs are not equal to humans. They are thought of as escort droids, servant droids, just pretty much robots and machinery that are made to serve humans. So even though Cinder wasn't made to serve humans, just because she is part cyborg, her family doesn't really welcome her as much. Her adopted dad, his name is Lin Garan, and her stepsister Peony, those are pretty much the only family members she has that are welcoming to her. Because she's a cyborg, they think she's really cool, and they really understand her situation. So, from her first meeting with her new family, it was kind of awkward because half the family doesn't want her to be there and the other half doesn't mind her. So, she discovers a little escort droid that is just all wound up in a little box, and she discovers that she can actually use her cyborg programming to fix this droid. So, that's exactly what she does. But by the time she's finished making the droid and fixing it up, her stepdad, who actually adopted her into the family, has contracted the plague, and he gets taken away, never sees him again. So from then on, life is pretty difficult for Cinder because she only has Peony to rely on to be her friend and her stepsister. And she kind of just starts her own mechanic business. She helps fix things around the house because her stepmom forces her to. She has her own little business where she goes out into the marketplace in New Beijing, has her own booth set up to fix and just really be a mechanic to the city. And here she meets the Emperor of the Commonwealth, or rather, in this first book, the Emperor's son, next in line to be the Emperor, Emperor Kai. And he needs help with his escort droid and has confidential information on it, so he only trusts Cinder to be able to fix it. Cinder finally does, but in the process of finding the parts and getting everything ready to fix for this escort droid for Kai, her stepsister Peony contracts the plague as well. This really takes a toll on Cinder because Cinder can't visit her. Cinder can't do anything because she also doesn't want to contract lettumosis. But because her stepmom is so distraught about her stepsister contracting the plague, she makes Cinder volunteer, even though it's not volunteering. But she makes Cinder get mandatory testing for the Letumosis antidote. She forces Cinder to go to the palace hospital and get the plague injected into her. And the book really takes a turn from there, because that's when Cinder realizes that something's not really normal about who she is and about her programming as a cyborg. From here on, she's able to fix the escort droid for Kai, and she comes in contact with Queen Levana. Queen Levana is one of the main antagonists of this book. Queen Levana is the Queen of Luna, which is the moon in this book. She rules in the city of Artemis, but she has a huge power advantage here because the location of the moon in relation to the Earth, you can literally see what's going on. You can have your security measured greatly. You have an upper hand here because you are really seeing every move that Earth makes. And Levana wants to marry Emperor Kai to form a formal relationship through a marriage pact, to have diplomatic relations finally be in her hands, that she can rule over Earth. And that is really one of the main conflicts here, because Kai knows that Levana has some advanced scientists on Luna that can really help with the plague, but he doesn't want to be under her control or to have her have some hand in Earth relations. So Cinder and Kai kind of form their own relationship, because through the process of fixing up Kai's escort droid and going to the palace often to figure out why she was so different in response to the Letumosis, they form a bond, and they are able to share information that Kai wouldn't normally share with just a normal person. And from here, Cinder is able to begin her quest about what she should do, about her life, about her situation, and really just how she's going to change things for the entire world. So the main protagonists in this book are Cinder and Kai. Main antagonists are Queen Levana and Adri, which is Cinder's stepmother. The side protagonists are Lynn Garan, who is Cinder's stepdad. He's a side protagonist because he doesn't really pop up much except for flashbacks and whenever Cinder wants to remember something. Side protagonist here also would be stepsister Peony, because Peony was the only stepsister who welcomed Cinder. Side antagonists are Adri again, just because Adri isn't present for some important parts of the book, but she is in others, so I put her as a side and a main antagonist. Another side antagonist includes Pearl, which is Cinder's other stepsister, who is just like Adri, does not like Cinder. Another side antagonist would be thaumaturge Sybil Myra, who is not really present in this book as much as she is in the other books, but I included her because we do get introduced to her as a character and as part of Levana's court in this book, and it is just really difficult to like her, because you're not supposed to. So, really, the main quest begins at the end of this book. Cinder kind of moves slow through this entire book, just because the vast world that Marissa Meyer built for us has to be explained thoroughly before we understand the complications and the implications of the situation that Cinder is in. So it's not until the end of the book that Cinder understands more about her ancestry, who she is, and about what she can do about the situation that Earth is in with the plague, and the complicated relationship with Levana and Luna. So, just some quick to end about this book. My favorite parts of this book are the world that Marissa Meyer built. It is so complicated and intricate and huge and incredible and imaginative and creative. I'm in awe of what Marissa Meyer did with all this. It is incredible. And it makes it more impressive because Marissa Meyer actually did not write this as an intention to make this a whole series. She actually just wrote this on her train rides every day. So it's really impressive to me that she was able to write not only one book, but 6 books total about this world. It is incredible and wonderful. And it really, and honestly, as funny as this may seem, it gives me hope for the future that, we can do something cool and scientific, and that we have the power to make the incredible things that we see in this book. Another one of my favorite things about this book is Cinder's character itself. Although she's only 16, she is so capable in her own right. Like I said, she's a mechanic. She's able to figure out complex systems, and she has her own business, and she gets pushed down constantly by people because she's a cyborg and just because of her situation. But she is so resilient, and she finds a way to make things better for herself and her family, no matter the cost. She sees what she wants and she goes for it. I love that about her. Another thing that I really love about this book is the writing style. Marissa Meyer's descriptors really paint an easy to imagine scene in the entire book. I mean, there is so much complicated technology that we obviously don't have. One, because this is a fictional book, and two, because this is set way in the future. So there's stuff that I can't even imagine, but the way Marissa Meyer describes it really makes it easy to picture. And I have my own little version. Like I can picture a whole scene, a whole setting, just because Marissa Meyer made sure to describe it to make it easy to understand, and I love that about this book. My only dislike about this book is that Cinder is 16, and there are some things that I do wonder if somebody can actually do at 16 years old. Like, I know how I was at 16, and there are some things that I know the Cinder does that I would not be attempting when I was 16. But because of the timeline of the story and the complicated family history, she does have to be 16, so I completely understand it. Okay, so now I'm moving on to book 2 of the series, which is named Scarlet. Okay, so here, the main character is obviously Scarlet, and this picks up where Cinder left off. We're introduced to new characters in this book because it is in a new setting. It is set in France on a farm that Scarlet's family actually owns. And Scarlet is the main protagonist along with Wolf, and she has taken over running the farm while her grandmother is gone. And her grandmother went missing, I believe, 3 weeks ago when this book starts. Scarlet doesn't know why, because Scarlet's grandmother is not somebody to just up and move. So Scarlet is pretty concerned. This entire time she's been running the farm, she hasn't gotten any communication from her grandmother, and it just looks like, from the scene that's described, it looks like her grandmother was taken. So Scarlet's very upset about this, but she has to keep running the farm. And she discovers somebody who's a little out of the normal, and his name is Wolf. She meets him because she delivers some farm vegetables to a restaurant that she sells to. And while she's delivering, this man, Wolf, actually ends up interacting with her, and he actually ends up protecting her from a very volatile situation in this restaurant. So it has potential to be awkward, but they both kind of bond in that moment. And along the way, Scarlet begins to have suspicions that Wolf knows where her grandmother is and has something to do with her kidnapping. So Scarlet basically commissions Wolf to go and look for her grandmother with her, and that's exactly what they do. And on the way, Scarlet discovers more about who Wolf is and who his colleagues are, I would say. And she also discovers more about Queen Lavanna and her plans. The main protagonists of this book are Scarlet, Wolf, and Cinder, because there are chapters where it switches to Cinder's perspective, even though they're in different locations. The main antagonists here are really mostly on Wolf's side, just because Wolf has to do with the kidnapping of Scarlet's grandma. So the main protagonists here are the Wolf Gang, Wolf's leader of the gang, Master Hale, and Rand, which is Wolf's brother. The side protagonists here are going to be Scarlet's grandma, because Scarlet's grandma isn't present till the final chapters, and Captain Carspell Thorne. He's a side protagonist because he is on Cinder's side, and Cinder is only part of a few of the chapters of this book. So that's pretty much the overview of this book. This is my favorite book of the series just because I love Scarlet as a character. She is so strong-willed. She is just like her grandma in the best ways, and she really knows what she's doing. She is so capable, and I just love that she will stand up for herself and anybody else, and her backstory is just so tragic, just because she comes from a broken home, but she really doesn't care. She uses that to her advantage, and I love that about her. And I love the setting as well. The farm life that is described in this book is really beautiful and lovely, and I know that's something that I would find peace at, so this is definitely my favorite book for those reasons. And so all I have for Scarlet, even though it's my favorite book, I really just don't want to spoil anything if you haven't read this book. I'm going to move on to the next book in the series, which is called Cress. And this introduces a new main character named Cress. And this is kind of complicated, but basically Cress is a shell lunar. And if you don't know what that is, you haven't read the books, a shell lunar is a lunar that was born without the power of mind control, without the power to manipulate the bioelectricity in somebody else's head and somebody else's energy field. I don't know how I would describe that. But all you need to know is that Cress is a shell, which means she doesn't have the power of mind control. And whenever shell children are born, they are identified at birth, and they are removed from the rest of society on Luna. Just because they view shells as less than, and they use shells for things like blood testing and to manipulate, to really get what they want out of shells. They're basically slaves. So the setting here is different than the other books. It's not on Earth at all, actually. It is half and half. The first part is not on Earth at all. Cress lives in a satellite orbiting Earth, and she is working for Queen Levana, but directly she works under Levana's thaumaturge, which is Sybil Myra. And she was introduced in the first book in Cinder, but she is the most present antagonist here, just because that's who Cress directly reports to. And Cress was, at a young age, viewed as gifted, not in, the normal way that Lunars are gifted. She was gifted because she has a great intelligence in terms of coding and computer systems, and she's really talented with technology. So when she was a little kid, she hacked into some systems to be able to get her and the other orphan shells access to things like reading and games and stuff like that. And thaumaturge Sybil Myra reported that to Queen Levana, who then ordered Cress to be shipped on a satellite and to watch over Earthen relations and basically spy on Earth for Levana. So, the main protagonists here will be Cress and Captain Carswell Thorne, who was introduced in the last book in Scarlet. The main antagonist here is going to be Sybil Myra. The side protagonist here will be Jason Clay, just because they happen to pick him up. He's also from Luna. He's a guard to Levana. And Sybil Myra. The side antagonist here was kind of hard to find like a side antagonist, just because the setting does change drastically halfway through the book. But I would say that the side antagonist would be the setting in the second part of the book. I don't want to spoil anything right now, but we'll go into that later. So just a quick overview. Cress works for Levana, but Cress doesn't like that she works for Levana because she was able to discern that Levana isn't really a good guy in this whole scenario. She wants to leave her satellite. She really craves other people. She doesn't communicate with anybody but Sybil Myra, just because she can't, and she has access to all of Earth's entertainment, all of Earth's media, because she is a spy for them, and she really, in contradiction to what Levana wants, she really falls in love with the idea of Earth and all the cool stuff that Earth has to offer, and she's just shoved in this tiny little satellite with her recycled air and recycled water and her freeze-dried food, and she's just really not happy with her situation. She's really lonely. So she falls in love with Earth, and she actually is able to find a lot of information on Carswell Thorne, who, like I said, was introduced in the last book, and she pretty much falls for him because she's able to find his pictures, find his criminal records, and find out a lot about who he is as a person, where he attended school. She kind of stalks him, but it's cute because they belong together. So she falls in love with him, and just by chance, she's able to find out his location, which is going to be with Cinder. And because of that, she's able to contact them. And she actually reaches out to them and she's protecting their ship from detection by any other ships, especially lunar and earthen ships that are intensely searching for her. So through this communication with Cinder, she is able to find and locate where they are and make an escape plan. So she wants to escape the satellite and go with Cinder and Thorn on their crew. However, the plans change drastically and they end up crashing. Thorn is the one who goes in to retrieve Cress, but Cinder and her comrades are unharmed. They just kind of flee and go the other way, while Cress and Thorn unfortunately end up in the desert. They crash landed. But this whole journey is about Cress and Thorn bonding and about finding Cinder and finding the best plan to be able to eventually go to Luna to work all of their plans out. So through this journey, Thorn and Cress are bonded pretty much forever. And Cress also has to adjust her expectations a bit because Cress was so alone for so long. She built up her expectations of what it would be like to meet Thorn himself and to just be on Earth. So her being on Earth in such a bad scenario, in the worst possible way, in my opinion, really just kind of disappoints her, and she has to come to terms that reality is much different than what she built up in her head. So it's really interesting in the eyes of somebody who isn't from Earth, coming to Earth for the first time, and just realizing that things aren't the way they were painted out to be. So my favorites about this book is that Cress is really smart. I love that she is probably the most intelligent out of the entire Cinder gang here. She is super smart, and she's so, I don't want to keep using the word capable, but that's really all I can think about here. She is so capable. She can just really take any piece of technology and run with it. Like, she knows exactly how to work it. She's super open to learning, and she doesn't get frustrated easily, which I love. She is such a patient person, and I love that about her. And her personality. She's just so shy and meek. Even though she could have a huge ego, she really doesn't. And I love that about her. Okay, moving on to the last book of the main series. Give me one second. Okay, so the last book of the main series is called Winter, after Princess Winter. And this one is set on Luna as well. Princess Winter is the stepdaughter to Queen Levana, so a very unexpected turn in terms of characters and their loyalties. So this whole book is about Winter and how she can help Cinder and how she can undermine Levana. So Winter struggles with the effects of lunar sickness. Lunar sickness occurs whenever a lunar is gifted with the ability to control bioelectricity and manipulate people's minds, but they don't use it. And this causes hallucinations, which are often severe and basically just make you go crazy. So Winter doesn't want to use her gift because she had a very traumatic experience with using her own gift on somebody who she thought she was helping, but she really was not helping at all. So Winter has lunar sickness and she often has hallucinations, but her guard, Jason Clay, who was introduced in the last book, in Cress, her guard, Jason Clay, is her best friend and kind of boyfriend. It's not official until later, but they obviously have a romantic and platonic relationship. It's very weird. Her best friend Jason Clay is also her personal guard, and he helps with her hallucinations. He talks her through it. He's kind of her comfort person. But she also struggles with being a part of Levana's court because she is her stepdaughter, and of her princess status, she has to be present for Levana's meetings. So she is present for executions, for court meetings, for really anything that Levana is present for, Princess Winter is most likely present for as well. So with that being said, the main protagonists here are going to be Princess Winter and the guard Jason Clay. The main antagonist in this book is Levana. The side protagonists, I would say, are the citizens of Luna who aren't part of the main city of Artemis, just because Luna's laborers and the working class, they really help and they really have a adoration for Winter, which Lavanna views as a huge threat. So I would say they do include as part of the group of side protagonists here. The other side protagonist here would be Winter's friend and pet wolf. His name is Ryu. He is located in the menagerie for most of the book, but he and Winter have a bond, and it's really special, and I love that, even though he's literally just a normal wolf, but I love that for them. And then side antagonist here would be Thaumaturge Amory Park, just because he's such a vile character, and he really does create a huge conflict because he won't follow through on some of the stuff that he promised to. But that's not who this is about. My favorites of this book, the relationship between Winter and Jason is just so wonderful. It's really a will they, won't they situation, but you know they will. You know they will. I love that about them. They are so pure and cute, and they just don't hesitate to call each other out, and they will do anything for each other. It is so wonderful, and I love that about them. Their chemistry is so intense. Although all the other books involve romantic relationship, their chemistry is special to me just because they know each other so well. And there's something about the trope in romance where the two best friends have been best friends ever since they were children, and they grew up together, and now things are changing, and I love that. Another favorite of mine in this book is Winter's willpower. As a citizen of Luna, if you are gifted, it is expected that you use your power to control whatever you want to. And if you don't, you're viewed as kind of less than, really. It's almost like the cyborg perspective on Earth, where they don't use cyborgs as equal to humans. But if a Lunar doesn't use their gift, people just can't fathom why. Like, why would you not use something because you are gifted? So I love that Winter has chosen her own path, and even though she is royalty, she is literally royalty, she has power in this book, she chooses not to use the very thing that makes her Lunar. And I love that about her, and people scrutinize her for it, people look down on her for it, and she just takes it. She just takes it. She doesn't care, and I love that. And obviously my favorite part of this book, my most favorite part of this book, is the ending, because this is the fourth main book in the series. And the way this ends and the way the entire series wraps up is just wonderful, and I love it, and I think it is really gripping. It's emotional, and it's written very well. I love that about it. So that's pretty much all I have to say as part of my review of the main series, but, if you're still listening, I'll just give you some background on how I discovered it. When I was in middle school, I was just looking at the books on the bookshelves in my science class, I believe it was, and I found this book of this shoe with a little cyborg foot inside the shoe, and it was called Cinder, and I thought it looked really cool, so I just read it, and then I was like, wow, that was a really cool book, and then I put it back, didn't think about it for a few years, and then I was at Barnes & Noble, and I found Cinder along with Scarlet and the rest of the series, and I picked it up, and I realized it was part of the Lunar Chronicles series, and I just never thought to even keep looking for it. I thought all those years that Cinder was just its own book. It was just a one-off. It was a single. And honestly, that's part of what makes this my favorite series, because Cinder can be read as just a single book, and it's great. And I just imagined that Cinder went off and had her own wonderful life, and I was okay with that. That was totally fine with me. So that's really what makes this a great series for me, what makes it my favorite all-time series for me. Is that I read it, and I just thought it was a fun book. It wasn't part of a series, and I was satisfied still. And it's wonderful that it is a series, and it keeps giving. So I read, I think 3 years later, I read the other parts of the series, and I really loved those. And then I got the 2 side books that aren't really side books, but they kind of are. I don't know. They are part of the main series, but they really don't need to be read to fully wrap up the entire series, if that makes sense. Everything that's really, truly important and crucial to the series happens in the 4 main books that I just described. But the 2 side books are cute, and I like them, and I also have them as well. So I just discovered those books after I read Cinder as a one-off book, and I fell in love, and I loved those books. And I have those original books that I bought still here with me in this room right now. And ever since then, I just really love the book, and I reread it from time to time because it gives me comfort, and I love the atmosphere and the setting in the book, and it makes me feel happy, and it takes me back, really. It is a young adult book, so there isn't any mature themes, really. Um, but you know what? I still love it, and it makes me feel confident and proud and hopeful for the future. Okay, that's really all I have to say about the Lunar Chronicles, my favorite series. If you haven't read it and you love fantasy and sci-fi, I highly recommend it. I think you will really like it. There's a lot to love about it, and the second book is my favorite, so you can also just start with the second book and then start with the first book after that. That's kind of what I love about these books, is that they can be read as just individual books, and it still makes sense. But I highly recommend those if you're a sci-fi and fantasy fan. It really hits the spot for me. I love it. It's my favorite series, and it probably will be forever. I love Marissa Meyer. Go check out Marissa Meyer and her other works too, because she stays in the same realm with all of her books. She is the overlord of fantasy and fairy tales. She rewrites fairy tales. I forgot to say that. All of these books are based off of retelling of fairy tales. So Cinder is obviously Cinderella, Scarlet is Red Riding Hood, Cress is Sleeping Beauty, I believe, or no, Cress is Rapunzel, and Winter is Snow White. So Marissa Meyer goes with the same theme for most all of her books. So go check out her other books because they're very similar to this in terms of retelling fairy tales. So thanks for listening if you still are. I'm sure the next episode will be a little better because this is just my first episode. So, alright, thanks for listening.